Marcus Donovan checked his watch as he walked across the tarmac toward his gleaming Gulfstream G650. The early morning sun reflected off the jet's pristine white exterior, highlighting the subtle dark blue pinstripe running along its fuselage. At 38 years old, Marcus had finally achieved what many considered impossible. He had built a tech empire from nothing but determination and raw talent. Born in a struggling neighborhood in South Atlanta, Marcus grew up watching his mother work 3 jobs to keep their small apartment. His father had left when Marcus was just 5, leaving behind only a stack of unpaid bills and a dusty collection of computer magazines. Those magazines became Marcus's escape. While other kids played basketball after school, he would sit for hours at the community center's outdated computer, teaching himself to code. "Mr. Donovan, we're ready for departure whenever you are," said the pilot, interrupting Marcus's thoughts. Marcus nodded and climbed the stairs into the aircraft. This jet represented more than just a luxury. It was a necessary business tool for his rapidly expanding cybersecurity company, Safeguard Solutions. With clients in 23 countries, Marcus spent more time in the air than on the ground these days. Inside the jet, his assistant Tricia waited with his schedule for the day. "The meeting in Chicago is set for 2 p.m. The investors are very eager to meet you," she said, handing him a folder of documents. "And don't forget your mother's birthday dinner tonight." Marcus smiled. No matter how busy he got, he never missed his mother's birthday. She had sacrificed everything to give him opportunities, and now he made sure she wanted for nothing. He had bought her a comfortable house in a quiet suburb, though she still insisted on working part-time at the community center to keep busy. As the jet lifted off from Atlanta International Airport, Marcus reviewed the presentation for his upcoming meeting. Safeguard Solutions had grown to a $200 million company in just 10 years, but Marcus knew they needed this next round of funding to expand into international markets. The competition was fierce, but his software was revolutionary, a security system that could protect against the most sophisticated cyber attacks with minimal processing power. What made Marcus different from other tech founders was his insistence on staying out of the spotlight. While his competitors chased fame with magazine covers and television appearances, Marcus preferred to let his work speak for itself. Few people outside the tech industry would recognize his face, despite his tremendous success. The jet cruised smoothly through clear skies. Marcus took a moment to appreciate the view from 40,000 feet, endless blue sky and wispy clouds stretching to the horizon. He remembered the first time he ever flew on a plane, at age 23, for a job interview that he didn't get. Now he owned his own aircraft. His phone buzzed with a message from his mother. "Proud of you, baby. Fly safe." Marcus smiled and sent back a heart emoji. His mother had been the one constant in his life, supporting him even when his early business attempts failed. Before Safeguard, Marcus had launched 3 unsuccessful startups. Each failure taught him valuable lessons, and he refused to give up. His breakthrough came when he developed a security algorithm that could detect patterns in hacking attempts before they penetrated a system. The technology quickly caught the attention of several major banks, and Safeguard was born. As the jet began its descent toward Chicago, Marcus reviewed his notes one final time. The next few hours would determine the future of his company. What he didn't know was that this routine business trip was about to take an unexpected turn, one that would put him in handcuffs despite his success, his wealth, and his position as CEO of one of the most promising tech companies in America. No one at the small regional airport outside Chicago recognized Marcus Donovan yet, but soon, everyone would know his name. The Gulfstream G650 touched down smoothly at Westfield Regional Airport, a small facility about 40 minutes outside of Chicago. Marcus stretched in his leather seat as the plane taxied toward the private terminal. Through the window, he noticed the airport was quieter than usual, just a few small planes parked on the tarmac and minimal ground staff visible. "We've arrived ahead of schedule, Mr. Donovan," the pilot announced through the intercom. "Weather was in our favor today." Marcus checked his watch. They had indeed made good time, almost 30 minutes early for his meeting with Horizon Ventures, a group of investors interested in Safeguard's international expansion plans. He had time to review his presentation once more before the car service arrived. "I'll let the car service know we're early," Tricia said, already typing on her phone. "They can probably get here sooner." Marcus nodded and gathered his documents. The jet came to a stop at its designated area, and the flight attendant opened the door, lowering the steps to the tarmac. The crisp autumn air rushed into the cabin, carrying the scent of jet fuel and freshly cut grass. As Marcus prepared to descend, he noticed something unusual. 3 black SUVs with tinted windows had pulled up near his aircraft, parking in a semicircle around the plane's nose. Men in dark jackets emerged from the vehicles. Were we expecting a welcome committee? Marcus asked Tricia, half joking. She frowned, looking confused. No, I only arranged for a single town car. Marcus stepped onto the stairs, his leather briefcase in hand. The men below looked up at him, their expressions serious. One of them, a tall man with gray hair at his temples, held up what appeared to be a badge. Airport security, the pilot whispered from behind Marcus. Something seems off. Before Marcus could respond, the gray-haired man called up to him. Sir, I need you to step down from the aircraft immediately with your hands visible. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine despite the warmth of his tailored suit. He had experienced similar situations before, being singled out despite his success. He carefully descended the stairs, keeping his movements slow and deliberate. Is there a problem, officer? Marcus asked calmly as he reached the bottom step. Homeland Security, the man stated flatly, not answering the question. We need to see your identification and all documentation for this aircraft. 2 other officers moved closer, their hands resting near their holstered weapons. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. My identification and the plane's papers are in my briefcase, Marcus said evenly. I'm going to open it slowly. The lead officer nodded, but didn't relax his stance. Marcus carefully opened his briefcase and removed his passport, pilot's license, and the aircraft registration documents. He had learned long ago that in situations like this, keeping calm was essential. The officer took the documents and examined them closely, his expression unchanged. After a moment, he spoke into his radio, too quietly for Marcus to hear. Another SUV pulled up, and 2 more officers exited the vehicle. Is my pilot permitted to come down? Marcus asked. He has additional documentation that might help clarify any concerns. Everyone stays on the aircraft for now, the officer replied. Mr. Donovan, we've received intelligence about a private jet matching this description being used to transport illegal substances. Marcus felt his stomach drop. That's impossible. This aircraft is used exclusively for my business travel. You're welcome to search it, but I assure you, you won't find anything improper. The officer handed Marcus's documents to a colleague and fixed him with a hard stare. We will be conducting a full search of the aircraft and all passengers. In the meantime, please place your hands behind your back. You're arresting me. On what charge? Marcus asked, his voice steady despite his rising anger. This is a detention pending investigation, the officer replied, already reaching for his handcuffs. How a man like you acquired a jet like this raises questions that need answers. Marcus knew exactly what a man like you meant. As the cold metal closed around his wrists, he realized this trip was about to become much more complicated than he had anticipated. The metal handcuffs bit into Marcus's wrists as the lead officer guided him toward the waiting SUV. Around them, more security personnel surrounded the jet, keeping Tricia and the flight crew confined inside. Marcus maintained his composure despite the growing knot of anger in his stomach. My name is Agent Pearson, the gray-haired officer said flatly. We have reason to believe this aircraft has been involved in transporting controlled substances across state lines. That's absurd, Marcus replied, keeping his voice steady. I purchased this jet 3 months ago for my business. Every flight has been properly logged and documented. Agent Pearson opened the back door of the SUV and motioned for Marcus to get in. We'll sort all that out at the station. Right now, we need to secure the scene and conduct our search. As Marcus slid into the back seat, he caught sight of Tricia at the jet's door, her face etched with concern. She held up her phone, silently asking if she should call someone. Marcus gave a small nod before the door slammed shut beside him. Inside the vehicle, another officer sat across from him, avoiding eye contact. Marcus recognized the situation for what it was. He had experienced similar treatment before, though never quite this extreme. I have a right to know specifically why I'm being detained, Marcus stated firmly. And I have a right to make a phone call. You can make your call when we reach the station, Agent Pearson said as he climbed into the driver's seat. As for why you're being detained, we received credible intelligence about drug trafficking on a private jet matching yours, arriving from Europe at this time. I was at a cybersecurity conference in London, Marcus explained. I'm the CEO of Safeguard Solutions. We provide security software to several government agencies, including Homeland Security. The officer in the back seat finally looked at Marcus, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his face. Agent Pearson, however, seemed unmoved. We'll verify your story at the station, he replied, starting the engine. Through the window, Marcus watched as officers with dogs began to circle his aircraft. They were conducting a thorough search, opening luggage and examining every compartment. The sight made his blood boil, but he kept his expression neutral. Losing his temper would only make things worse. 20 minutes later, they arrived at a nondescript government building on the outskirts of Chicago. Marcus was led through a side entrance, away from public view, and into a small, windowless room with a metal table and 3 chairs. Wait here, Agent Pearson instructed, removing the handcuffs before leaving Marcus alone in the room. Marcus rubbed his wrists and took a deep breath. He had missed his meeting with the investors by now. Years of building his business, maintaining a spotless reputation, and still, all it took was one look at him to erase all that hard work in the eyes of law enforcement. The door opened, and Agent Pearson returned with another officer, younger with close-cropped hair and a stiff posture. We've begun examining your documentation, Agent Pearson said, placing a folder on the table. There are some inconsistencies we'd like to address. What inconsistencies? Marcus asked. The jet is registered to Safeguard Solutions, but you claim to be the owner. I am the founder and CEO of Safeguard Solutions, Marcus explained patiently. The company owns the jet, and I use it for business purposes. The younger officer spoke up. And how does someone like you come to be the CEO of a multi-million-dollar company? There it was again, someone like you. The implication was clear and infuriating. I founded the company 10 years ago after developing proprietary cybersecurity software, Marcus replied evenly. Our client list includes 6 Fortune 500 companies and 3 federal agencies. All of this is public information you could verify with a simple Google search. Agent Pearson leaned forward. Mr. Donovan, if that is indeed your name, we take drug trafficking very seriously. Cooperation now would be in your best interest. Marcus met his gaze unflinchingly. I have cooperated fully, but I won't confess to crimes I haven't committed. I want my phone call now, and I want it on speaker so both of you can hear exactly who I am calling. A tense silence filled the room as the agents exchanged glances. They had no idea who they had really detained, but they were about to find out. Agent Pearson pushed a landline phone across the metal table toward Marcus with obvious reluctance. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead in the small interrogation room, casting harsh shadows across everyone's faces. One call, Pearson said firmly. Keep it brief. Marcus dialed the number from memory, his fingers steady despite his inner turmoil. The phone rang 3 times before a woman's crisp voice answered. District Attorney Morris's office. This is Marcus Donovan, he said clearly, making eye contact with Agent Pearson. I need to speak with DA Morris urgently. The younger agent shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Pearson's expression remained impassive, but a muscle twitched in his jaw. One moment, Mr. Donovan, the secretary responded. While they waited, Marcus remained silent. He had learned long ago that silence could be more powerful than words in situations like this. The tension in the room grew with each passing second. Marcus, a warm female voice finally came through the speaker. This is unusual. We're scheduled to meet next week about the cybercrime task force. Jennifer, I apologize for the unexpected call, Marcus replied. I'm currently being detained by Homeland Security agents at a facility outside Chicago. They've seized my aircraft and are suggesting I'm involved in drug trafficking. There was a pause before DA Morris responded, her voice now sharp with concern. Who is the lead agent there? Put them on. Agent Pearson reluctantly took the phone. This is Senior Agent Pearson. What followed was a one-sided conversation consisting mostly of Pearson saying, "Yes, ma'am, and I understand," while his face gradually drained of color. After 3 minutes, He handed the phone back to Marcus. Marcus, I'm sending my chief of staff to your location immediately, Jennifer said. He should arrive within the hour. In the meantime, I expect the agents to treat you with full professional courtesy. We'll sort this out quickly. Thank you, Jennifer, Marcus replied before ending the call. The room fell silent again. The younger agent left without a word, clearly unsettled by the conversation. Pearson remained, his previous confidence visibly shaken. Water? He offered, his tone markedly different. Yes, thank you, Marcus replied evenly. As Pearson left to get water, Marcus closed his eyes briefly, feeling the weight of the situation. This wasn't his first encounter with prejudice, but it was perhaps the most blatant. His thoughts turned to his mother, who had warned him that success wouldn't shield him from discrimination. When Pearson returned with a paper cup of water, another man accompanied him, older, with salt and pepper hair and a serious expression. Mr. Donovan, I'm Director Walsh of the Chicago field office, the new arrival said. I've just been briefed on the situation, and I want to personally apologize for any misunderstanding. Marcus took a sip of water before responding. Is my staff still being detained? And has the unnecessary search of my aircraft concluded? Your assistant and crew have been moved to the waiting area, Walsh explained. The search is being wrapped up now. We received intelligence about a different aircraft with similar markings, which led to this unfortunate error. An error? Marcus repeated, the words hollow in his mouth. Is that what we're calling it? Walsh had the decency to look uncomfortable. We're preparing your release paperwork now. Your property will be returned immediately, and we can provide transportation back to the airport. That won't be necessary, Marcus replied. My company's attorney is already en route, and I'll be leaving with him. For the next 40 minutes, Marcus sat alone in the room, declining further conversation with either Pearson or Walsh. He used the time to center himself and consider his next steps. This incident wouldn't simply be forgotten or brushed aside. When the door finally opened again, a tall black man in an impeccable suit entered. Michael Benson, Safeguard's chief legal counsel and Marcus's friend since college. They messed with the wrong man today, Michael said quietly as he helped Marcus gather his belongings. Marcus nodded slightly. Yes, they did. And now they're going to learn exactly who I am. As they walked toward the exit, agents and officers who had earlier looked at Marcus with suspicion now couldn't meet his eyes. The power dynamic had shifted dramatically, but the damage was already done. Michael guided Marcus through the facility's sterile hallways, past officers who suddenly found their paperwork fascinating as the two men approached. The forced detention had lasted nearly 4 hours, and the afternoon sunlight streaming through the windows reminded Marcus of his missed meeting with the investors. Trisha's already rescheduled with Horizon Ventures for tomorrow morning, Michael said, as if reading his thoughts. She explained there was an unexpected situation with authorities. They were understanding. Marcus nodded silently. His phone, wallet, and other personal items had been returned in a clear plastic bag, which he now carried in his hand. The indignity of it all still burned, but he maintained his composure with practiced discipline. As they approached the main exit, a commotion erupted near the reception desk. A man in his mid-40s with sharp eyes and a well-worn suit was engaged in a heated conversation with Director Walsh. I don't care about your protocols, the man was saying. I've worked alongside Marcus Donovan for 3 years on critical cybersecurity initiatives. Your people detained a key government contractor without even basic verification. Walsh's face had turned an uncomfortable shade of red. Agent Carter, this is an internal matter. It's a national security matter. Agent Carter interrupted, his voice carrying across the lobby. When he spotted Marcus, he immediately broke away from Walsh and approached. Mr. Donovan, he said, extending his hand. FBI Special Agent Thomas Carter. We worked together on the Western Banking Protection Protocol in 2023. Marcus shook his hand, recognition dawning. The cross-platform security measures. Your team helped implement it across 5 states. 6 states. Carter corrected with a tight smile. Your security architecture saved the banking system from what could have been the largest coordinated cyber attack in U.S. history. By now, several officers and agents had gathered nearby, watching the exchange with growing discomfort. Director Walsh approached cautiously, his earlier confidence completely evaporated. Agent Carter is one of our liaisons with the FBI's cyber division, Walsh explained unnecessarily. Carter turned to Walsh, his expression hard. Do you have any idea what Mr. Donovan's company does? The security clearance he holds? The projects he's currently working on for our government? Walsh swallowed visibly. We're conducting a full review of how this happened. His company's encryption protocols protect communications between our field agents and headquarters. Carter continued, his voice rising. His software secures databases containing information on confidential informants and undercover operatives. The silence in the lobby was deafening. Every eye was on Marcus now, but with a completely different expression than when he had been brought in hours earlier. I received a call from the director himself, Carter added. Not the local director, Walsh. The director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. That's how important Mr. Donovan is to our national security infrastructure. Marcus placed a calming hand on Carter's shoulder. I appreciate your support, Agent Carter, but I'd like to leave now. It's been a long day. Carter nodded, still glaring at Walsh. I'll walk you out. As they moved toward the exit, Agent Pearson stepped forward, blocking their path momentarily. His earlier arrogance had vanished, replaced by what appeared to be genuine regret. Mr. Donovan, he said quietly, I need to apologize personally for my conduct earlier. I made assumptions that were unprofessional and incorrect. Marcus studied the man's face for a moment before responding. Assumptions can be dangerous, Agent Pearson, especially when they're backed by authority and firearms. Outside, a black SUV waited to take Marcus and Michael back to the airport. Agent Carter walked with them to the vehicle. The Bureau will be issuing a formal apology, Carter said. This should never have happened. No, it shouldn't have, Marcus agreed, his voice finally betraying some of his anger. But it did, and it will again to someone else who doesn't have my connections or resources. As the SUV pulled away, Marcus stared out the window at the facility that had held him captive for no reason other than prejudice. In the rearview mirror, he could see Carter still standing there, watching them leave. Behind him, a group of agents including Walsh and Pearson had gathered, looking like children who had been caught breaking something valuable. What's your next move? Michael asked quietly. Marcus turned away from the window. First, we make sure this goes public. Then, we make sure it never happens again. The next morning, Marcus sat in his hotel suite overlooking Lake Michigan. The Chicago skyline stretched before him, beautiful and indifferent to the events of the previous day. He had barely slept, his mind racing with plans and possibilities. A gentle knock at the door announced Tricia's arrival with breakfast and the morning newspapers. She placed the tray on the coffee table and handed him the Chicago Tribune. It's already made the front page, she said quietly. The headline was bold and unmistakable. Tech CDO wrongfully detained. Homeland Security mistakes African-American executive for drug trafficker. Beneath it was a photo of Marcus from last year's Technology Innovation Summit, looking confident in a navy suit beside the governor of New York. Marcus skimmed the article while sipping his coffee. The reporter had managed to gather statements from multiple sources, including an anonymous agent at the facility. The details were accurate and damning. His phone rang, the fifth call from a national news network since dawn. Tricia took it from his hand and declined the call. The Horizon Ventures meeting is in an hour, she reminded him. Michael has arranged for a private entrance to avoid the reporters gathering in the lobby. Marcus nodded, grateful for her efficiency. Thank you, Tricia, for everything yesterday, too. Of course, she replied with a small smile. Director Walsh called again. He's requesting a private meeting this afternoon. Before Marcus could respond, his phone lit up with a call from an unknown number. Normally, he would ignore it, but something told him to answer. Marcus Donovan speaking. Mr. Donovan, this is Secretary Wilson from the Department of Homeland Security. The voice was deep and carried the weight of authority. I was hoping to speak with you regarding yesterday's incident. Marcus sat up straighter. I'm listening, Mr. Secretary. First, let me offer my personal apology for the inexcusable treatment you received, Wilson said. I've reviewed the preliminary reports, and it's clear that protocols were ignored and assumptions were made that have no place in professional law enforcement. I appreciate that, Marcus replied, but I'm more concerned about what happens next. There was a pause before Wilson continued. That's why I'm calling. We're conducting a full internal investigation, and those responsible will face appropriate consequences. But I believe we have an opportunity here to address something much larger. Marcus moved to the window, looking out at the city below. I'm listening. Your company specializes in pattern recognition algorithms and security protocols, Wilson said. What if we could apply those same principles to law enforcement procedures? Create a system that reduces the human bias element in security operations. The idea hung in the air, unexpectedly aligned with thoughts Marcus had been considering through his sleepless night. Are you suggesting I help the very agency that handcuffed me on my own plane? Marcus asked, his tone neutral. I'm suggesting a partnership that could prevent what happened to you from happening to others, Wilson replied. Your experience, combined with your technical expertise, puts you in a unique position to effect real change. Tricia appeared at his side with a note. Investors waiting downstairs. Marcus nodded to her before responding to the secretary. I need to go now, but I'm interested in continuing this conversation. Have your office send a formal proposal to mine. After ending the call, Marcus straightened his tie and prepared to leave for his meeting. Michael entered the suite, legal documents in hand. The lawsuit is ready whenever you want to proceed, Michael said, placing the papers on the table. We have a solid case for discrimination, unlawful detention, and harassment. Marcus looked at the documents, then at the newspaper headline. Finally, he gazed out at the Chicago skyline again. Hold off on filing, he said. Something more interesting just came up. What could be more interesting than taking them to court? Michael asked, confused. Changing the system from within, Marcus replied. Secretary Wilson just offered me a chance to develop protocols that could prevent this from happening to someone else. Michael looked skeptical. You trust them after yesterday? Trust? No, Marcus said with a slight smile, but I do believe in leveraging opportunities. Sometimes you have to be inside the room where decisions are made if you want to change the rules of the game. 2 weeks after the incident, Marcus sat at his desk in Safeguard's Atlanta headquarters, reviewing the final draft of his proposal for the Department of Homeland Security. The sleek office buzzed with the usual activity, but there was a new energy that hadn't existed before. His wrongful detention had transformed from a personal humiliation into a mission that energized his entire company. The media requests are still coming in, said Tricia, placing a stack of messages on his desk. CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, they'd all want exclusive interviews. Marcus nodded thoughtfully. Initially, he had avoided the spotlight, declining all interview requests. But now he recognized the power his story held. Schedule one interview, he decided. The morning show that has the most diverse hosting panel. Tricia made a note and smiled. Already done. They're holding a slot for next Tuesday. A gentle knock at the door announced Michael's arrival. The attorney entered with a tablet in hand, his expression serious but satisfied. It's official, Michael announced. Agent Pearson has been suspended pending a full investigation, and Director Walsh has been reassigned to a desk position in Nebraska. The official statement acknowledges racial profiling as a factor in your detention. Marcus leaned back in his chair, absorbing the news. The acknowledgement was significant. Agencies rarely admitted to racial bias so explicitly. And the other thing, he asked. Michael's expression brightened. The FBI has agreed to your terms. They want to implement your identification verification system as a pilot program in 5 major airports. If successful, it could roll out nationwide. This was the victory that mattered most to Marcus. The system he proposed would require multiple verification steps before detention, reducing the likelihood of bias-based arrests. It wouldn't eliminate prejudice, but it would create procedural barriers against its worst effects. Perfect timing, Marcus said, gesturing to his computer screen. I've just finished the DHS proposal. If both agencies adopt these protocols, we could see real change in how law enforcement conducts security operations. The phone on his desk buzzed. Mr. Donovan, there's a Ms. Elaine Johnson here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment. Marcus frowned, the name unfamiliar. Did she mention what this is regarding? She says her son was detained at LaGuardia Airport last week under similar circumstances to yours. She read about your case and came directly here. Marcus and Michael exchanged glances. Send her in, Marcus decided. A minute later, a woman in her early 60s entered the office. She carried herself with dignity despite obvious exhaustion. In her hands was a folder filled with papers. "Mr. Donovan, thank you for seeing me," she said, her voice steady but strained. "My son Brandon is a medical student. Last week, authorities detained him for 4 hours, claiming his ID was fake and that he matched the description of a wanted person." As she told her story, Marcus felt a familiar anger rising within him. The details were different, but the pattern was the same. Brandon Johnson had been humiliated, threatened, and eventually released with a half-hearted apology when they confirmed his identity. "They wouldn't let him call anyone," Ms. Johnson continued. "He missed his residency interview. When I saw your story in the news..." Her voice finally broke. "I thought you might understand." Marcus stood and walked around his desk. "I do understand, Ms. Johnson, and I want you to know that your coming here today matters." He gestured for Michael to join them. "This is Michael Benson, our chief counsel. If you're willing, we'd like to add Brandon's experience to the documentation we're submitting with our proposed reforms." Ms. Johnson wiped a tear from her cheek. "That's why I came. Brandon was afraid speaking up would hurt his medical career, but I told him silence never fixed anything." Marcus smiled at the wisdom in her words. "Your son is lucky to have you as his advocate." After she left, Marcus stood at his office window, looking out at the Atlanta skyline. What had begun as a personal injustice was growing into something larger, a coalition of voices demanding change. "Cancel my meetings tomorrow," he told Tricia. "I need to revise this proposal. We're not just fixing the system anymore." "What are we doing?" she asked. Marcus turned from the window, determination in his eyes. "We're rebuilding it from the ground up." 6 months after his wrongful detention, Marcus stood at the podium in a packed conference room at the Department of Homeland Security headquarters in Washington, D.C. Behind him, a large screen displayed the Safeguard Verification Protocol logo, a shield with interlocking circles representing the multiple layers of identity confirmation now required before detention. "Today marks the official launch of a program that began with an injustice but will end with progress," Marcus said, his voice steady and clear. Camera flashes punctuated his words as journalists documented the historic moment. In the front row sat Brandon Johnson and 5 other individuals whose stories of wrongful detention had been incorporated into the program's design. Beside them were Agent Carter from the FBI and Secretary Wilson, both instrumental in pushing the reforms through bureaucratic resistance. "The Safeguard Protocol isn't just about technology," Marcus continued. "It's about creating accountability and reducing the human bias that too often corrupts our security systems." The protocol had 3 core components: a multi-factor verification system that required officers to confirm identity through at least 2 independent databases before detention, body cameras with direct feeds to supervision centers, and a civilian oversight committee with real-time access to detention data. After the presentation, Marcus mingled with attendees at the reception. Brandon Johnson approached, now in his 2nd year of medical residency at Johns Hopkins. "My mother wanted me to give you this," Brandon said, handing Marcus an envelope. Inside was a simple thank you card with a handwritten message. "You turned your pain into purpose. Our family will never forget." Marcus tucked the card into his jacket pocket, deeply moved. Secretary Wilson joined them, glass of sparkling water in hand. 23 airports have already implemented the system," Wilson reported. "Early data shows a 64% reduction in wrongful detentions and complaints." "And Agent Pearson?" Marcus asked. Wilson's expression turned serious. "He completed the enhanced training program you designed. Surprisingly, he's become one of its strongest advocates among the older officers. He asked if you would consider meeting with him someday." Marcus nodded thoughtfully. "Perhaps, when the program is fully implemented." Later that evening, as Marcus's private jet prepared for takeoff from Reagan National Airport, he noticed something different. The pre-flight security check was thorough but respectful. The officers verified his identity using the new protocol, and one even mentioned how the system had made their jobs easier by providing clearer guidelines. As the plane climbed into the night sky, Marcus opened his laptop to review the expansion plans for the program. Next month, he would present the protocol to police departments in 10 major cities, adapting it for street-level interactions. His phone buzzed with a text from his mother. Watching you on the news tonight. So proud. Your father would be too. Marcus smiled at the mention of his father, who had passed away 3 years ago. He had lived long enough to see his son build Safeguard into a successful company, but not long enough to witness its transformation into a force for social change. Tricia approached with a cup of tea. The governor of New York called. He wants to implement the system statewide for all law enforcement agencies. Tell them we'll need to schedule training sessions first, Marcus replied. The technology is useless if the officers don't understand the why behind it. Looking out the window at the glittering cities below, Marcus reflected on the journey of the past 6 months. His wrongful detention had opened doors that might have otherwise remained closed. His anger had fueled innovation rather than destruction. Most importantly, the system that had humiliated him was now being rebuilt with fairness at its core. It wasn't perfect. No system designed by humans ever could be, but it was better. And it would continue to improve as more stories shaped its evolution. As his jet soared through the night sky, Marcus Donovan was no longer just a successful entrepreneur or a wrongfully detained black man. He had become something more powerful, an architect of change, using his unique position at the intersection of technology and experience to transform a moment of injustice into a movement for accountability. Sometimes, Marcus thought as the lights of Atlanta appeared on the horizon, those who try to put you in handcuffs end up helping you break the chains for everyone.